cases of registration free where the schools would want to serve these learners, but because they are not registered as special needs, meaning they...
And part of what we have done is that we have visited 99 schools in the coast region, and the schools that we visited, we found over 5,000 learners. And it's interesting to note that in these schools where we visited these learners, we found 212 teachers. This points to a gap where we are seeing a ratio of 1 is to 24 teachers for in terms of the teacher-student ratio. And another thing that we realized when we visited these schools is that the dropout rates for the boys are significantly higher compared to the boys, where we see at enrollment we have 58% of boys and girls are at 42%, yet we are seeing more boys dropping out of school. So we're seeing more of these learners with disabilities in our schools dropping out. And the question really is, are we having implementation of the policies that are supposed to support these learners in school? Do we have enough teachers? And what are we doing about this? So as the Pamoja project for inclusive education in Southeast Africa, we are working to bridge the gaps that are there in the implementation of policies that support inclusive education. And how we are doing this, we are working with policy makers, including the county governments in these coastal counties and in other counties in the country, to make sure that we have resources and we have targeted interventions that are supposed to support the learners in these schools. So in the area of staffing, we are working with the county government to make sure that we have enough teachers at the national level, also calling upon the policy makers to have adequate resourcing so that we have enough teachers who are attending to these learners in school, and also ensuring that we have learning resources and materials that these learners need in school. It is a call for education financing as we support these learners to make sure that we are able to provide these learners with quality, inclusive and equitable education. When we visited these schools in the coastal counties, one thing that stood out is that the lack of a school feeding program was one of the hindrances that we found to impeding learners going to school. And this can be attributed to poverty levels in the coast region, where we are seeing a lot of learners coming from families that are economically disadvantaged. So even affording a meal at home becomes a challenge. What having a meal in school means to this child is that this child can go to school. This child, beyond attaining education, has another reason to be in school, and this promotes retention, because at home these children are not even getting balanced meals, and even getting 3 meals a day at home is a challenge. So when this learner comes to school and they are able to have food in school, they are encouraged and they can keep coming to schools. We encountered parents who said that learners being in school and having food in school motivates them as parents to even send these learners to school. So by not having food or feeding programs in school, there are learners who are locked out of school, even some opting to work or provide labor in their homes, or even outside of the homes in the community, just because they have to look for meals. So my call would be, as we look at poverty as a disadvantaging factor in education, can we look at providing meals in school? Feeding programs very much and by large support learners staying in school.
A major challenge that special educators experience is poverty. Most of these children come from very, very poor backgrounds. Some of them cannot even afford transport to get to schools. Others don't get meals at home. The parents are also not able to cater for the basic needs that enable the child to come to school. And that makes it quite difficult for special learners to benefit in a school setup. Majorly, we have a serious staffing issue. Our schools have no teachers. And when we look at the staffing code and the way we are supposed to cater for these children as an individual, the individualized planning program becomes difficult when teachers are overstretched with many students and with the many conditions that they have to take care of. So we urge that the government reconsiders this and improves staffing in all the special schools in this country, so that these children can learn and have a meaningful education while they're in school, and also have it in a more comfortable way and gain gainful skills while they're in school. as much as the government is doing so much to assist the special schools, particularly special schools that have a boarding setup, we have challenges with funding because we have many workers that assist these learners. We need caretakers that have to be in the dormitories day and night. We need many workers to support their life in school. And paying for the salaries for the support staff becomes an issue. And when we look at the funding that special schools get from the government, the grant in aid is supposed to cater for their food and the workers' salaries. That money is not adequate, especially for boarding special schools. For these schools, I believe, if well utilized, it is reasonably enough. But for boarding schools, something needs to be done by the government so that it is made easier for the special educators to be able to cater for these children properly over the weekends and even during school sessions. One of these gaps is placement. When we look at the special children, most of them have more than one condition. And sometimes when they are placed in an institution that is not catering for the dominant condition, it becomes very difficult. For example, we may have a child who is mentally challenged. Equally, this child has a physical condition, and this child may find it very difficult to benefit from learning in a special institution for the intellectually challenged while he has to use a wheelchair, and the institution at which this child has been placed does not enable him to move with the wheelchair properly. So that becomes difficult. The other issue with placement is learners with autism. We do not have a special institution that can accommodate many learners with the autistic condition. And at most times we find the autistic children placed in a mental setup. Most of these children sometimes don't benefit fully because they are not essentially mentally retarded per se. So we would urge the government to reconsider building institutions for learners with autism so that that autistic spectrum alone can be catered for and those learners can benefit fully.
And in Mombasa, it's been a journey to make sure that all our children are included in every aspect of education. So we were the first county to have what is called a social protection strategy under UNICEF in 2018. And it is coming up for renewal, and that formed the basis of our relationship, and we've had a long and fruitful relationship with UNICEF that culminated in what is called the STRIDE program, school transport for our children with disability. And under that program, we were the first county to map out where our children living with disabilities were. We had a week-long exercise that we were able to find over 3,100 children in our 6 sub-counties, and we were able to classify them according to the different kinds of disability. We were able to have a team of doctors and assessors, and we were able to help them get the disability cards, and we were able to do an assessment for them, and we were able to place those who were not in school. So that exercise was successful, and those we were able to register through the partnership with UNICEF. We were able to give them a stipend of 3,000 shillings a month for 4 months, and some of those parents took that money and were able to begin businesses that are successful until today. As the county government, as part of our mandate at early childhood, we are the first county to offer free lunch in our public schools. And this is through a partnership with Food for Education. That partnership began with an MOU in December of 2022 that said that we would begin this exercise in the first term of 2023. So we spent a month just making sure everything was ready, and on the 20th of February we started giving lunch to our children in all our public ECDs, and we also included our schools for persons living with disability and our special units. So it is not just focused on our ECDs, but we've included our schools and our special units so that we make sure that the value that our ECD children are getting where they have a meal is also passed on to all our learners with disability, to make sure that they have a good school experience, they're able to come in and enjoy a meal and be able to pay attention and get everything that the teacher has prepared for them. So our school feeding program is targeted at 11,000 learners every day. We have, like I said, it's a partnership with Food for Education. It is going to cost us 30 shillings per child per day. So if you look at that, it costs about 330,000 a day, which translates into 1.65 million, and over a span of 36 weeks, which is a normal school year, then we're looking at approximately 60 to 70 million a year.
On our side, as a government, we've supported in that bill, and that shows that we are ready to partner and go extra miles with you. What we have talked with my Waziri of Education is that we've seen the need, we've seen the gaps. At the moment, from in Kilifi, they have this perception that people living with disabilities, these disabilities, neurogi, that there is cultural issues. So most of them actually are being wanafungiwa and doing things like that. But we are trying to talk to them, to tell them, you need help, because when they continue just having them closed up, they will not open up. So we want to bring most of them out so that they can be helped. Was it yesterday or the other day when we were celebrating World Syndrome Day, Down Syndrome Day? We said we are going to pick them up, we are going to talk to those parents so that even our local schools, we could get maybe a classroom whereby we could have them initially as we take them to these special schools. But ideally, I've seen there is need of the infrastructures, because these are special. They cannot just fit in any classroom. So ideally, where we could help, especially in this group, we are going to help in providing for them a conducive learning environment, so that apart from Sahajana and Kilifi school, we can have pilot schools in each sub-county, whereby we could start with a few as we empower the few teachers, because they are not just any teachers who can handle them. We need these special needs teachers.
And who I have
this NGO inataka kusapotiwa na Kesho Kenya SBS. Mama tena uziwe? Sawa, we can support.
in the year 2004, and as we edge closer to 20 years, that is 2 decades of support.